This one deserves a paper pop. The paper pop on this show, reserved only for the most notable of topics. South Carolina beat Clemson yesterday, 31-30. Why do we play these games? I'll ask you again, why? Why do we play these games? Well, to shut people like me up who expect a 14-plus point Clemson win. Didn't take him long over there on the Big Spur last night. I needed Sherbert to delete the posts, but he didn't, so I was just called out in front of God and everyone because those folks remembered, yeah, he kind of sort of predicted Clemson to beat us by 17 or more, not even just 2 touchdowns. In my defense, what I would like you to remember is 3 weeks ago, South Carolina does not score an offensive point in Gainesville. 38-6 was the final. Florida rolls all over South Carolina. And that answers my question. Why do we play the games? We play the games because the following week, they disposed of what looked to be a surefire participant in the playoff, just out of nowhere. 63-38 over Tennessee. Remember that? Well, if you'd forgotten that already, and let me take a ceremonial sip of, what is this, orange blood, it might as well be. Because everything that's orange that has been put in South Carolina's path, Shane Beamer's just, man, it's illegal in some states what that guy's done. 31-30 yesterday against Clemson. Do you realize Shane Beamer, of all people, has disposed of half the potential playoff field? Whomst have thunk it? Not even I, but it's happened. This right here, though, after that Florida game, this is the equivalent of like the Undertaker, hand coming up through the grass from the grave from the Buried Alive match against Mankind, I think. Belcher was at 96. It was in Philadelphia, I know that. Where did this come from? Where has this come from? Does anybody have an explanation for me? I challenge the most diehard of South Carolina fans. Any of you who have documented proof following 38-6 against Florida that you saw wins over Tennessee and Clemson coming, I'm not going to call you a liar. I simply want to see it. And I trust that you know what I mean when I say documented. I'm not going to take your cousin's word for it. I need visual evidence. I need a paper trail, please. Single-handedly, man, just wrecked half the playoff field here. You want a padlock stat from this game? 360-99. Those were the respective passing totals from these two teams. And it was Spencer Rattler hanging 360. And it was DJ and it was Clemson failing to hit the century mark. 99 is such an appropriate, it just wouldn't ring as fully if they hit 100 yards passing. So 99 total yards passing. They had, I think, 8 completions. DJ Uiagalelei was 8 for 29. You could play quarterback for Navy some weeks and do better than that. It's not just a DJ thing. This is a team issue, and it's not the first time it's popped up this year. But this was what I call a self-talk special for me, because I didn't go to the game. I didn't get to watch it live. So when I was leaving Columbus, Ohio last night, and big thanks to Delta for getting me out of there on time, because it was pouring down rain everywhere I went, except Columbus. This was the game that I dialed up. This was the first game I watched on the flight. And a self-talk special is the kind of game where I got my little earbuds in so as to not distract and disturb. And yet I'm watching something that grabs me so much that I can't help but talk. I feel bad for the lady that was sitting next to me because I'm just steadily talking to myself the whole game because that's how incredulous I am at what I'm seeing. But here's what I expected. I knew what the final was. I knew South Carolina had won. Trust me, every one of my Carolina fans had let me know. The iJosh had had its battery drained from I told you so's. But what I expected was 31-30. Okay, how would this happen? Clemson favored by 2 TDs. Noon kickoff in Clemson, no less. I think they had won like 40 in a row there. How did this happen? Well, the first thing surely is South Carolina had multiple points off turnovers, and there had to be a lot of hidden yardage here, and some of that's true. But the other part is not true. In fact, it's the opposite. This could have been a lot worse. South Carolina could have won this thing a lot more handedly than they did. Because I look at it, and if you tell me Carolina wins 31-30 and that there was a pick six in the game and that same team also threw an interception on the opponent's 1 yard line, I would have said that makes sense. That must be how South Carolina won. Then you tell me, no, it was South Carolina that threw the pick six and still won. It was Carolina that also threw a pick on the 1 yard line and still found a way to win. They were 3 of 13 on third down and still found a way to win. That's the kind of stuff that makes you talk to yourself on an airplane. Because I still really don't get it. But then I watch the game and I see, hey, Beamer ball's kind of still a real thing, isn't it? Special teams won in the football game. Like Spencer Rattler did some good things. He also made some really bad plays. But in the end, you saw what he threw for. Special teams won this game for Clemson. They had a great night punting. But also, when you look at that stat line for DJ, don't misunderstand it. They were put in horrible field position all night, were the Clemson Tigers, because of how good South Carolina was in the punt game. And now they're an 8-win team. South Carolina started 1-2. See, that's the other thing. If you told me they were going to be an 8-win team, certainly they had to start 2-1. But they didn't. They started 1-2. They got beat by Arkansas. They got blasted by Georgia and still found a way to win 8 games. They beat back-to-back top 10 teams for the first time in program history. That just kind of comes out of nowhere to me. But it happened. And so it does end up being the case that South Carolina has a better record than they did last year. 7 wins last year, 8 wins this year. As we say on the show all the time, it's not always linear. Progression's not always linear. And I told you I thought they could go worse record-wise this year and be a better team. Well, it turned out they went better and were a better team this year. Now, they got Spencer Rattler in there via the portal, and that was a big surprise last offseason. What will they do this year? Because this was as big a recruiting tool as it was a football game for South Carolina. I think everyone knows that. And let's not let me discount the impact of beating Clemson. So it was a big recruiting tool on top of being a football game. I want to take that back because this was really, really huge for the program, really huge for the people there, and they deserve it. Really bought in fan base. They deserve it. My love for the Carolina fan base is well documented, even though I did pick them to lose yesterday, and they let me know about it. But then I also wonder, coming off of it, okay, now what's that going to do for recruiting? Because now, unlike last year, when you're trying to sell hope and you're trying to sell vision and you do have at least a decent season you're coming off of to sell, now you got to win over Clemson to sell. That's a little bit different. That's a little different ball game when you got that. And 2 years in a row now, you've exceeded expectation. Everybody there loves the program. Like, they love being in the program. So you're never going to have to convince folks and beg folks to come to South Carolina. Folks love it when they're there. Now, they got a reason to go there and also expect to be able to compete. That's a pretty new concept. I don't know what to make of Clemson right now. I really don't. I think in some ways this was a good year. In some ways it was a down year. Look, they were on the fringes of the playoff conversation. They're still going to go to the ACC championship game. So I'm not going to call that a wholesale failure, but I am going to call it reason to at least look kind of side-eyed and go, all right, Dabo, what now? What now? And there's a public stubbornness to Dabo Swinney, which I've never bemoaned him for, because I think I'd kind of be the same way. Even if I do have some doubts about what I'm doing right now, I'm just not giving you the satisfaction of knowing it. And I think he's been that same way sometimes. Now, he came out and said, hey, DJ's going to start the ACC championship game. That's this year. I'm not even focused on this year. The ACC championship game is going to be such an afterthought nationally, even I'm willing to admit that I'm already focused on, okay, what are you doing after this year? They're not going to the playoff. Their ceiling is ACC championship, and they're favored. I forgot what they're favored by. They're favored by a little bit. But his staff, is his staff good enough? His roster, is his roster good enough? I answer no and no. He may disagree on both fronts. And we'll see, because he'll win out there because he's the head coach. But South Carolina scored a big one yesterday. Very, very big. Now we'll find out how big the ripple effect is when we watch the signing class they bring in and then the portal class they bring in. Thanks for watching, guys. Don't leave yet. Don't leave yet. Make sure you like the video and please subscribe to the channel. Not just for me. That's how we keep this entire thing free.